We thought we'd take you through a little bit of a journey that we've had at the City of Monash. So that primarily we'll be talking about our experience with Clayton and the laneways that we've addressed there in just recent times as well. But for those of you that aren't familiar with the City of Monash, it's in the southeast of metropolitan Melbourne, about 20 kilometres out from the CBD area as well. So you can just see it highlighted there in yellow. We have about 180,000 residents, and just under half were originally born in another country. And this evening we'll actually be conducting an Australian citizenship ceremony for 460 candidates from 58 countries. So we are a very richly and culturally diverse community, and we span a lot of different areas, as you'll see behind me here as well. So Mulgrave is one of our southern corners of the municipality and encompasses Waverley Park, AFL Park, and also some of the other key areas that people would have heard of before is Oakley, Glen Waverley, Wheelers Hill, Mount Waverley, and the list goes on. And we also have some really big entities in the area as well, in Monash University and also Monash Medical Centre, as well as Holmes Glen TAFE, just to name a few. So we have a number of different people from a number of different backgrounds with varying interests as well. And one thing that has come up previously when we have been speaking with our community is the need to address community safety. In particular, when we look at one of our corners of the municipality, which is Clayton. So you'll see here some images that depict where we were looking at addressing some of our laneways. So again, I mentioned Monash University, but also Monash Medical Centre, which is a really key big campus just off Clayton Road. We often have staff travelling from Clayton Railway Station through some of the laneways and also all the surrounding residential areas as well. So I'll now hand on to Colin, that'll talk you through some of the logistics of our project, some of the history of it, and I'll chime in along the way.
Thanks, Micaela. So the target area for the project was down here on the shopping strip, a fairly large shopping strip, and the Thomas Street Laneway is a connection between this residential area here through to the shopping strip, and there's a car park here adjacent to the station. The activity centre itself has a vibrant character, and its eclectic mix. It's, as I say, dominated by the strip shopping. But over time, we collected substantial evidence of safety and amenity issues through formal research and a range of community and stakeholder consultations. One of the benefits of our grant application was that there was already a community strengthening programme on the ground in Clayton. The Strengthening Clayton and Clarinda project. It was a DPCD funded project across two councils, Monash and Kingston. So I've been on the ground there for nearly 3 years, working with the community across Monash and Kingston. So when the grants came up, it was an ideal opportunity to try and do something about the perceptions of safety in the laneways down in Clayton. We had a fairly modest budget. We were funded for one of those two laneway projects there. And our timeline, once we had all the design elements sorted out, was pretty brisk as well. As I mentioned, the community strengthening project was already on the ground, so we had an ideal opportunity to engage with the community. I was running 4 theme groups across the community at the time, and one of those was a community safety and an amenity theme group. Victoria Police usually sent one of their senior sergeants along to sit in on the meetings monthly. I had the local community safety police officer from Victoria Police who worked in the area. I had the chairman of the local traders association, and about 14 or 15 residents drifted in and out of that theme group over the last 3 years. So it was a great opportunity to test some of the interventions that we wanted to introduce in the laneway. In addition to that, we had a walkability report that Rodney Tolley had written on the Clayton area. Some of you may know him. And also a community safety audit that had been done by the community safety officer. I mean, some of the comments we received from the local community were things like, we need to make this precinct friendlier by improving the look of our shops at the back, There's no public art, nothing to make the area look attractive. Community art would make a huge difference. Just before I go on to graffiti prevention, we did do a fair bit of consultation. As has been mentioned earlier, one of the successes of these sorts of projects is to get council buy-in, break down those stovepipes. Having been on the ground for a little while as a place manager, I managed to have that ability to approach the different managers across council and get their buy-in before we put our budget proposal together and our application.
If I could just add to that as well, you know, Colin's touched on something really important. Community consultation wasn't just about getting the local residents on board or having support or engagement from them. It included a variety of different people. So we've mentioned police, traders, council, and all the different departments in there as well, but also local representatives and decision makers as well. So it's important not to put all your eggs in one basket and to really make sure that people are with you from the outset and really supportive. And I know from my experience, there really wasn't any opposition to what we wanted to do.
No. So we've heard all the practical examples, and we heard from Peter the different things that you can do around trying to make a place feel safer. So I'll just whip through these slides. I won't read everything out that's on them, and I think the images just display quite, you know, what we did on the ground and how it was a success. As I mentioned, I was a bit worried about the street art, but the feedback we got from our community safety group and wider community engagement, they were very supportive of the images. They thought they would look good, and boy, they did once they were on the walls. Quite what that sign was doing there, I don't know, because, you know, no entry. So don't use this laneway to get through to the shops. We heard earlier about getting schools involved from Marjan, and this mural on one side of the laneway was done with the help of the local Westall Secondary College. Their students came along, and in fact, it was the Victorian Police Safety Officer, Biljana Lucio, who assisted in the creation of this mural. You'll have noticed that there was a car park there, and one of the problems with the car park was that motorists who came down, if all the parking spaces were taken, they used the laneway as a turning circle. And we had more than one occasion when pedestrians were put in danger. So this was an ideal opportunity to rectify that. This was also access to the rear of the shops down the back of the laneway. What the urban designers came up with was this zebra stencil, which was put on the ground, and it acts as a cue to motorists that you know, they should slow down. And we've seen lots of evidence of that. The traffic slows. They're not quite sure what is on the ground. It's a zebra crossing. They slow, and it allows pedestrians time to see that they're approaching. This was at the far end of the car park. The shrubbery had been allowed to grow, lots of graffiti, and now there's clear lines of sight. You can't see it from here, but the artists had such a good time that they did an extra mural on the back of the garage there. I mentioned about the car park and the turning circle. So this is where cars would use the laneway as a bit of a turning circle. And now it's clearly delineated. just some of the different elements. I think one of the biggest changes has been the lighting of the laneway. We've used, modern LED lighting, which makes such a difference. And I think you can see from this picture, council are keen to try and introduce the LED lighting into the car park. The difference between the laneway and the car park just shows you what it looked like before. So outcomes and learnings, there's a few on the board there. We were lucky, we were on the ground, the local community embraced the project. They loved the artworks, the laneways being used, which was the main object. We've not had one tag on the street art, so there's a lot of respect for that. In fact, we heard from the artist that people travel to come and have a look at it. I think these are going to be online anyway, so contact details there if you need any more information. And that's the name of the two artists who did the work.
I'm just interested in how you chose the artists and whether you actually got them to draw up their work ahead of time so you knew what you were going to get.
Yes, it went out to a proper tender process. So I think there were 3 or 4 artists, who applied to do some original design work, and then it was chosen by Urban Design, and then showed to the community.
Was it an unsafe place?
Yes. Historically, so a couple of years ago, there'd been a couple of assaults. People would use the car park, but not come through the laneway. They'd seek alternative routes to get round to the shopping strip. It had become a bit of a haven for dumping rubbish. So there were syringes, so there was evidence of drug use. And it was a pretty antisocial area.
And an interesting point that Colin made before as well is, this sort of artwork isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's certainly better than what was there before. So more often than not, we'll find, it's going to be a rarity that you have a piece of art that everyone is going to find appealing. But if there is something there and it makes people feel safer and it's pleasing to look at and it just contributes aesthetically to the area, then more often than not, people will be supportive. And again, there's that respect. They're less likely to be tagged than if it's just a blank wall with graffiti on it.
Yes, do you have any further comment on lighting? We have mixed views in our organisation about whether we go for the more yellow style lighting or the whiter, which generally I think is the LED, but I'm not totally sure on that. It's not my area of expertise, but I'd be interested in what your comments are on that. Thank you.
I think with the LED lighting, when we talked with Urban Design, the idea was that we didn't want any dark areas. We wanted to make sure that the lighting lit the whole of the laneway. I think with traditional lighting, you end up only casting the light over a certain area. As you can see through the laneway, you can see right the way through. There's no dark spots, so people feel safer.
Hi, I'm Melissa from Frankston City Council. I was just wondering if you considered placing an anti-graffiti coating over the mural at all.
Yeah, I think with the investment they've done in the street art, that was a given. They put the anti-graffiti coating on it. But as I say, we've been really lucky. There's been no tagging or anything on the art to date.
And I'd say that wasn't an isolated incident either. We're seeing it more and more pop up across the municipality, and you can see they're usually corner spots at what used to be a blank wall, and the second that you have a bit of street art up there, then the tagging just seems to disappear.
If I could just add to that, the Clayton Traders Association, when we first started talking about the Creating Laneways project, they were keen to ensure that graffiti across the rest of the activity centre was cleared and gave a strong message to graffiti taggers that it was a no-go area.
Just wondering from place management perspective, Colin, did you try and engage with the traders there? I'm just looking at the corporate branding signage, the Vodafone stuff, and it doesn't create place, shall we say?
If you'd seen it before, we did get some wins there. It was right across the front entrance of the laneway. We managed to convince them to bring it down to a smaller area. I mean, it was their wall; they were entitled to put adverts up there. But we managed to bring it back somewhat. And I don't know if you saw on one of the earlier slides, Telstra had a phone box there. Very neglected, covered in graffiti. We managed to convince them that they needed to do something about that.
And we're quite fortunate in that the local Traders Association there is very active, is very community orientated already. So they certainly weren't dragged kicking and screaming to the project. They were well and truly on board from the beginning.